Migraines really need a multi-system approach because they affect so many different systems of the body. The nervous system's involved. As we said, the digestive system can be involved, the immune system, the endocrine system, so your hormones. As you mentioned earlier, many more women than men are affected. In fact, 1 in 4 women are supposed to get migraines at some time in their life, and that's thought to be connected with the female fluctuation in hormones. Musculoskeletal system can be involved, so our bone structure and our muscles, and the cardiovascular system with the effects of the blood flow to the brain. So it can be a combination of factors, or it can be one factor, but we know that there's certainly sort of many physical, mental, structural, environmental, diet and lifestyle factors. And what we're learning with the more recent nutritional science is that genetics are really involved as well. And that's because individual genetics can determine a wide range of micronutrient requirements that are unique to that individual. So their nutritional requirements may well be different depending on their genetics. So as you can see, it works across multiple body systems, and we need a real kind of holistic approach to tackle all of this. And often my clients come to me and say that they've got migraines, but they kind of mention it in passing. They've often got another disease process going on in their body, and that might be IBS, it might be thyroid, it might be stress, weight loss that they come to see me for, depression, diabetes type 2. There's lots of different things that can be affected there. So where do we start with all of this? Well, if you've already cleaned up your diet and you're wondering, what else you can do, I'd certainly contact a nutritionist or functional medicine doctor to get some further functional testing done. But if you haven't looked at your diet, then that really would be the best place to start, because you can do it for yourself. It's as easy as switching up your grocery list. And what I recommend is a whole food plant-based diet. So these are foods that are in their natural form, minimally processed. It's low in fat, and it's salt, oil, and sugar-free. Now, a whole food plant-based diet naturally lends itself to being helpful for people who suffer from migraines because it's anti-inflammatory, it's full of antioxidants, and we know that there's a certain amount of oxidation of cells going on, and we can think of that like a rusting of our cells. So we need the antioxidants in place that we get from the abundant fruits and vegetables and plant foods in a whole food plant-based diet. All of these foods are quite hydrating as well, and hydration or just being dehydrated can be a key factor for some people who suffer from migraines too. So these foods are naturally abundant in the key nutrients that are needed to support reduction in migraine headaches. And what the first thing that we look at really is blood sugar balance. Many people who suffer from migraines get intense cravings, especially prior to a migraine attack coming on. And it's often like a sugar craving, a carbohydrate craving, and they'll be craving things like sugary snacks and maybe, coffee as a pick-me-up or energy drinks, fizzy drinks, sodas, sweets, all of those sort of things to get that quick fix of sugar. And the problem is it actually sends your blood sugar balance on a bit of an up and down spiral, just like a roller coaster. And what we really want to do is stabilize blood sugars, especially for people who suffer from migraines. And you can get into this kind of real up and down roller coaster. Migraine studies have shown that you can get a resistance to insulin, and people who have that resistance to insulin tend to have increased incidence of migraines. And of course, insulin resistance is the precursor to diabetes type 2. So what we want to do is stabilize the blood sugars so that we're not having these highs and lows, reaching for the quick fixes all during the day. And the best way to do that is to include plenty of protein in your diet. So on a whole food plant-based diet, that excludes animal products like meat, fish, dairy, eggs. But you can still get plenty of protein from whole plant foods. So things like nuts, seeds, tofu, beans, grains, all of those things contain a good amount of protein. And one of the key amino acids that's found within protein is tryptophan. And tryptophan is the precursor, so it's needed to make serotonin in our body. Now, serotonin has been linked to fewer episodes of migraines. And people know of serotonin as the happy hormone, the mood regulator, but it also has a lot of other important functions in the body. So serotonin carries signals between the nerve cells throughout the body, and it may have other effects on our blood circulation, that vasoconstriction, the narrowing of the blood vessels that we spoke of earlier. Now, 80% of serotonin is actually made in the gut. People think of it as the neurotransmitter in the brain, and some of it is there, but 80% of it is made in the gut. So gut health is really, really key, and that's another thing that we need to look at for people who suffer from migraines. And the great thing about a whole food plant-based diet is you are providing your gut microbiome that balance of bacteria and microbes that live in our gut that we know now is so important to our overall health. You're providing plenty of fiber, which is the food that our healthy, beneficial gut bacteria live on and thrive on. And an unbalanced microbiome is definitely linked to migraines. So the interaction between gut microbes and our health is really, really important. So the foods that support a healthy microbiome are within the natural foods that are the whole food plant-based diet foundation, and they are like the prebiotics. People are often more likely to have IBS if they suffer from migraines, and also food allergies and things like celiac, so gluten sensitivity, or allergies such as that. Also, potential bacterial infections like H. pylori are common with people. They're more likely with people who suffer from migraines. So the all-important thing for anyone who suffers from migraines is to get lots of fiber in your diet. And, we really should be eating the rainbow, eating 30 plus different types of fruits and vegetables during the day. Now, many people aren't anywhere near eating that amount, so build it up slowly. But a whole food plant-based diet is naturally high in soluble and insoluble fiber, the foods that our gut microbes survive and thrive on, and it keep harmful bacteria at bay. So anyone who suffers from migraines, it's really important to keep the bowels moving, because anyone who's constipated, and that's really common for people who suffer from migraines, will find that their toxins aren't being removed or eliminated from the body effectively. So if your diet is lacking in fiber, you're much more likely to be constipated, and that's going to be a mediator of your migraines. So fibre of all types, really important, but specifically green leafy vegetables. And yep, your mum was right, always told you to eat your greens, and she was spot on there. And in fact, 2 cups a day of green leafy vegetables are recommended. They're really high in folate, and we know that people who suffer from migraines have a higher dietary requirement for folate, and it's associated with migraines, particularly with people who have a certain genetic makeup. There's a gene called the MTHFR gene that often, particularly people who suffer from migraine, may need some extra support, and that would be in the form of folate, which is abundant in green leafy vegetables. So get plenty of those into your diet. Green leafy veg are also really a good source of magnesium, and magnesium is needed to support clearance of our neurotransmitters, and it relaxes the nervous system. So magnesium is like nature's tranquilizer, it's a muscle relaxant. So where you've got that maybe vasoconstriction, the narrowing of the blood vessels going on, then a good amount of magnesium going into your system will help relax and allow the blood to flow more freely. Beans and legumes and nuts are also really good sources of magnesium, so chuck them in everything. It's quite easy to get greens into your diet once you really focus on getting them in. Have lots of salads, just chuck them in whatever you're cooking. So green leafy vegetables are also full of B vitamins, and B vitamins are another really key nutrient for people who suffer from migraines. We know that studies show that vitamin B2, or riboflavin as it's known, is needed in higher amounts with people who suffer from migraines. B2 is found, as I said, in your green leafy vegetables, but tofu, nuts, mushrooms, all vegetables. So that's another key nutrient to make sure that you're getting plenty of in your diet. Another B vitamin that's really key as well is vitamin B12, because if you don't have enough B12 in your system, it can lead to oxidation, that kind of rusting of your cells that I mentioned earlier. And that's a form of stress on the body. And that stress can actually lead to an increase in something called TNFA, tumor necrosis factor alpha, which increases inflammation. Now we know that people with migraines have an underlying inflammation in their body, and we really want to get that down and under control. So making sure that you've got enough B12 in your diet, and good sources of these are really from fortified foods, because you don't really get B12 in our diet naturally. So things like yeast extract, fortified plant milks, nutritional yeast, some vegan cheeses, but read the label, because some foods are fortified, others aren't, and it's certainly worth looking into supplementing if you're not eating any animal products, because it's only animal products that really contain vitamin B12 in our diet, and that's only because the supplement that they feed the animals with is in their feed. So making sure that you're getting enough B12, especially important for anyone over the age of 50. Our B12 naturally declines as we get older. As our stomach acid declines, the process of absorbing B12 is more challenging for our bodies. So another key nutrient is vitamin D. And vitamin D is estimated that around 45 to 100% of people who suffer from migraines are deficient in vitamin D. It acts more like a hormone in the body, and it can affect sleep, So sleep's really important for anyone who suffers from migraines. Tiredness can be a trigger for a migraine attack. So making sure that you're sleeping well every night. And for anyone who's low on vitamin D, it really will affect your migraines. So the best source of vitamin D for us is the sunshine. It is in some foods, but very low amounts. Things like cereals, fortified milks, mushrooms grown under UV light. But really make sure that you're getting enough vitamin D every day. And I recommend an app that you can get on your phone called D-Minder. And it helps you just track. You put in where you live. It helps you track the weather and how often you need to get outside to absorb the amount of vitamin D that is required every day. So another thing to look at for people who suffer from migraines is getting enough fats in your diet. And by that, I mean healthy fats. So remember, it's salt, oil and sugar-free, a whole food plant-based diet. So you're not looking at getting your fats from oils, rather the oils within the natural foods. So things like nuts and seeds, olives, avocados, unflavored yogurts, all of these things contain natural fats, often high in omega-3. Now, omega-3 helps to correct your omega-6, omega-3 balance. And if that's out of whack, you may well get some increased inflammation. So it's good to have an omega-3 source going in. Omega-3 also helps with cell hydration and cell wall flexibility to help keep everything functioning really well in the body. And remember, our brains are made of 60% fat. So we need to make sure that we've got a good amount of healthy fats going in the diet. And as I said earlier, it's really important to stay hydrated. If you suffer from migraines, dehydration can be a trigger. And also making sure that you're having enough water during the day will help flush out any toxins that may build up, and we're all exposed to toxins in our everyday environment. It also helps keep the bowels moving and staving off any constipation, but also eat your hydration. So a lot of people struggle to drink down 8 to 10 glasses of water that we're told to drink every day. But if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, it's naturally abundant in hydrating fruits and vegetables. All of these things contain a high water content. And, don't forget to drink water as well, but also herbal teas, coconut water, but not fizzy drinks, not any of the sodas that are, even the ones that are sweetened and sugar-free, because that sweetener can trick the brain into thinking that it's going to get sugar, and then that can trigger sugar cravings. So another key nutrient is iron. Now, migraines can be a symptom of iron deficiency anemia, but it's not typically picked up by your doctor because migraines are not necessarily sort of presenting with iron deficiency, but evidence suggests that getting enough iron greatly reduces the frequency of migraine attacks, especially in menstruating women. So the great kind of foods that are in a whole food plant-based diet are dried apricots, chickpeas, green leafy vegetables again, blackstrap molasses, which you can just sort of, it's a thick syrupy, like a real treacle kind of in a jar that you can just use as a sweetener in cooking, or just lick it off the spoon. Figs, dried figs are great. Tahini, which is the sesame seed paste. So all of these foods are really good sources of iron. Now, another key nutrient is one called coenzyme Q10. And deficiency is common of this in migraine sufferers. And coenzyme Q10 is involved in energy production. So often people who get migraines feel fatigued and they feel really tired a lot of the time. And CoQ10 is involved in that energy production. It's a vital nutrient to produce ATP, which is like the energy currency of each and every cell in your body. Now, CoQ10 is found in some foods like spinach, cauliflower, soybeans, lentils, pistachio nuts, peanuts, broccoli as well. It's not really abundant, so it's a good thing to kind of look at, and maybe especially if you're an older person. Again, it's one of those nutrients that tends to decline in the body as we get older. It's actually made naturally in the body. It's something that our body naturally produces. But certainly certain medications that people can be on, especially statins, they can deplete the body of coenzyme Q10. So that's one to look out for. Now, a great food to include in a whole food plant-based diet, herbs and spices. So particularly things like chili, ginger, turmeric, cinnamon. All of these things have traditionally been used in Ayurvedic medicine to ease pain and reduce inflammation. And ginger actually suppresses migraine. It's been shown in studies. And just 1/8 of a teaspoon of powdered ginger was used in one study and found to be as effective as sumatriptan, which is one of the triptan class of drugs that are used commonly for migraines. So you might know it as Migraine. I don't know what it's called in America, but it's Migraine in UK. And yeah, 1/8 of a teaspoon of powdered ginger was as effective. So that's quite incredible. Chilies are great. They contain an active substance called capsaicin, which is useful for migraines because it's got a desensitizing effect. So it can relieve pain by decreasing the pain-causing neuropeptides, such as there's one called substance P that comes from your nerves, that's in your nerve terminals. So chili can actually kind of suppress and calm down, take that sensitization away. Turmeric is another spice that's traditionally used for its anti-inflammatory properties. It's got the curcumoid active ingredient in it, which is a potent anti-inflammatory and will reduce inflammation, which is often, inflammation is often accompanied with migraines. So curcumin and CoQ10 together was found in one study to be more effective than each of them on their own. Another great herb to have is rosemary. So rosemary is circulatory and nervine stimulant. So it may help with that sort of blood vessel, like dilating the blood vessels and allowing the blood flow. Cinnamon is a great antioxidant in itself and also anti-inflammatory, and may help with sugar cravings. So it's great to have cinnamon on your breakfast in the morning because it may help curb those sugar cravings throughout the day. So they're the sort of things to really include, but what about if you've got sensitivities and allergies? Well, sensitivities, allergies and intolerances can be quite common in people who suffer from migraines, especially if there's some gut health issues as well going on. So sometimes I recommend a gluten-free diet for my clients, especially if they've got some gut symptoms going on. And gluten-free is a good idea if people are susceptible to cross-reactivity that can go on with your immune system. So gluten contains gliadin and glutamine, which are two proteins within the wheat itself that people can have sensitivities to, and they can cause your immune system to get involved, and that leads to more inflammation. So that's a simple thing that sometimes people can try if it's indicated to go onto a gluten-free diet. For some people, histamine foods can be a trigger for their migraines. So histamine foods, well, there's a long list of histamine foods. Pickles, tomatoes, spinach, vinegar, pineapple, prunes, plums, raisins, raspberries, avocados, and olives, to name a few. But all of these can be a trigger for some people. And another food is fermented foods. So the amines in fermented foods, amines stimulate the central nervous system and can increase or decrease blood flow, which could stimulate migraine attack coming on. So fermented foods are things like sauerkraut, yogurt, cultured yogurt, tempeh, which is the fermented soybean, miso paste, pickled vegetables, all of those sort of things. And we sometimes use a low histamine diet as a diagnostic tool to see whether that will help. So gut health, because food sensitivities may only develop due to a dysbiosis in the gut, so that imbalance of good and bad bacteria. And once you kind of work on your gut health a little bit more, sometimes these sensitivities and allergies and intolerances actually settle down quite a lot. So another thing that can be a contributing factor is to look at the methylation process that's going on in your body. Now, methylation is a key chemical process that goes on in every cell. And to put it simply, it's just the transfer of what we call methyl groups, one molecule to another across your cells. And it happens all the time in your body every single day. Methylation underpins the function of every system in the body, not least supporting the nervous system, stress, detox, circulation, and energy. And methylation becomes easily disrupted in the face of genetic variances, so that MTHFR genetic SNP that I mentioned earlier, and that can lead to nutrient deficiencies. Just the challenges in our modern world of stress and toxin exposure means that sometimes we need a little bit more support with our methylation. And MTHFR, that gene is responsible for adding a methyl group to folate. So that folate from the green leafy vegetables that I mentioned earlier, ensuring that the body can use this vital vitamin folate for our energy. And it's not always picked up in blood tests that it's low if you're low on folate. So the well-known effects of reduced methylation are linked with migraines, and they are things like fatigue, lightheadedness, hormone imbalances, inefficient absorption of vitamin D. So it may be that you're getting out in the sun enough, but you're not actually able to absorb it. Risk of vitamin B deficiency. So we heard earlier how important vitamin B is for migraines, and if you're not methylating well, then maybe you're not absorbing all of the B vitamins from all the food that you're eating. And methylation can lead to impaired detoxification as well. So all of this leads to that general kind of underlying inflammation in the body. So what kind of foods can you eat to promote methylation? Well, citrus peel, beets, rosemary, blueberries, cranberries, turmeric, beans, nuts, green tea. There's just a few that you can use, and they're quite easy to get into a whole food plant-based diet once you concentrate on, really making an effort to get them in. So another thing that we need to look at is supporting neurotransmitters. Now, neurotransmitters like serotonin are just chemical messengers in the brain, and there are two that are thought to be involved in migraines. So one of them is called GABA and one of them is called glutamate, and these two neurotransmitters have a kind of yin-yang relationship. We need to make sure that they've got the right balance between them. GABA is what we call an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and it's produced using another enzyme in the body called glutamic acid, or known as GAD, and that is dependent on vitamin B6 being present. So we need to make sure we've got good sources of B6, vitamin B6, found in carrots, sweet potato, green peas, banana, chickpeas, spinach, avocado. And the other one is glutamate. So that's a major excitatory neurotransmitter of the central nervous system, and it's involved in memory and learning. And plant foods contain glutamate, which is glutamic acid, and we need to make sure that we've got this as well in our diet, and that can be through things like cabbage is a great source, beets, kale, collard greens, spinach, parsley, to name a few. So these are an important thing to make sure that you're getting enough of, but getting the right balance, because too much glutamate can actually be linked to migraines as well, in that it has too much of a stimulating effect and can actually be a trigger. So triggers for migraine, they can be really varied depending on the individual, but things like weather, pressure building up, changes in weather, stress is a big one for a lot of people. Citrus fruits, these are the most kind of common triggers that are reported. Alcohol, caffeine, cheese, chocolate. What I recommend is that people keep a log. So keep a log, or like a food diary, if you suspect it may well be food that's triggering your migraines, then worth keeping a diary. And if you're fortunate enough to identify a trigger, then that's great news, because if it's a food trigger, you can just avoid it. Not so great if it's the weather, because there's not a lot you can do about that. But, certainly worth identifying it, because that may bring relief for some people.